My name is Shimon Shkuri. I'm the president of Ariel Property Advisors, and I would like to welcome you for the Bronx State of Mind event. This phrase was coined by the one and only Jason Gold, who's here with us today, and is going to moderate the panel in a few minutes. Our company is a real estate investment services company that focuses on three things. Our 60-person operation focuses on investment sales, where our brokers are divided into geographic areas and covering pretty much every block in New York City. We have our capital services professionals who provide both debt and equity advice to our clients nationwide. And we have our investment research arm, which provides a tremendous amount of information to the industry as well as to our clients. Some of the reports, or a summary of the reports, is here with you today, and both Jason and our panelists are going to speak about that in a few minutes. I want to take a minute just to acknowledge that we're in very interesting times today when it comes to the multifamily asset class specifically. As you all know, heard, read, we're expecting to see some changes in how rent-regulated buildings are being treated. While this is not the venue for it, I'm sure that some of our panelists would love to talk about it, and they're welcome to do so. I also wanted to mention that if any of you want to speak to any of our professionals or partners, you can get the rundown of everything at some point in time. We will also, in the next few weeks, we're going to tell you how we view valuations of multifamily in different locations and different buildings and different type of affordable areas and rent stabilization, deeper, less deep, and so on and so forth. So you're welcome to reach out to us for these questions. We'd like to start off by saying thank you to BMAR, to the Bronx Manhattan North Associations of Realtors, who are co-hosting this event today with us, and to Ellie Rodriguez, who's not able to attend here today. The organization is a for-profit professional organization. If you're doing business in the Bronx, you should definitely attend some of the events. Great networking, great people, a lot of the owners are there. I want to thank the Japan Society. This building has been very good to us. We've been attending and conducting a few events here, and we appreciate your willingness to work with us. And then I'd like to thank our panelists, Mark Stagg, Rick Gropper, and Rodney Perez. Thank you so much for being here. You're active in the market, you know the Bronx, and we really look forward to hearing more about what you have to say. So as I said, we'd like to direct your attention to the folders that are in front of you. We have some information about the Bronx. There are really four items that I see today as interesting in the Bronx. The first is pricing and upside potential of the Bronx compared to other areas of the city. Even today, with the new rent regs, we feel that the Bronx is going to be one of the areas that is going to be affected less, clearly depending on which buildings and whatnot, but will be affected less than areas like Manhattan or certain areas of Brooklyn. And this is something that investors pay attention to. The second thing that we see in the Bronx today is the opportunity zones. One of the beneficiaries of that program is the Bronx, with about 70 different areas that are zoned for that. We've seen several larger transactions going through within the opportunity zone, and we can tell you that we've marketed and put in contract some transactions that benefited from the opportunity zone, and we've seen the price changes, and Jason and the team here can tell you more about it later. Rezonings benefited the Bronx. That's the third item, specifically in Jerome Avenue. We know about at least 200,000 square foot that is coming up right now as a result of that rezoning. And the last and fourth item is the fact that new entrants that we haven't seen in the Bronx before are in that market. So for example, we've seen last year Brookfield buying Somerset Secret's deal, also in an opportunity zone. We've seen Wharton Properties buying a deal in the Bronx. We know about Equity One that used to own there. So many new entrants are in the market and paying attention to it. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to our colleague and friend and Greg Gropper, Jason Gold, and to the panelists to start this discussion.
Thank you, Shimon, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first ever Bronx State of Mind. I am Jason Gold, Director of Investment Sales at Ariel Property Advisors. We are lucky enough to have one of the three most active owners and developers throughout the Bronx with us today. Let's go down the line. I'll let everyone introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about your company. Mark, let's start with you.
Sure. Mark Stagg, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Jason, for the phone call. I've been in business probably about 20 years. We are a vertically integrated company. I'm a general contractor. Come from a construction background. We are a property manager. So we're a developer, construction, as well as management. We currently have about 9 sites right now, 1,500 units going up. We built, own, and manage 2,500 units throughout the Bronx. We're very active. And I guess that's it for now.
Thank you. So thanks to Ariel Property Advisors, Jason, and Rick and Mark. I'm third generation business owner, Bronx-based business owner. We're probably one of the more active developers of real estate based in the county. We manage over 2 million square feet of real estate. A lot of that real estate is commercial real estate. It's about a little over 1 million square feet of commercial real estate. And the balance of that is housing. What we've developed since about 2007 is mostly affordable. And to date, we have nearly 1,000 units of affordable housing, all of which is located in the borough of the Bronx. We own and manage property 100-mile radius from our offices in Middle Italy. That's the real Middle Italy, I'm not that. So we go as far as eastern Pennsylvania. We've got properties in New Jersey, Westchester, Manhattan, but we really love the Bronx, and so I'm happy to be on this panel discussion. To talk about what we call the Bronx God's country.
I'm Rick Gropper, one of the principals of Camber Property Group. I started the company with my partner Andrew Mullis about 3 years ago, and we bought approximately 3,000 units of housing around New York City, and we have one property in Hempstead on Long Island. The majority of what we do is affordable housing, and we own a lot of rent stabilized that is affordable, and we're also in the process or have completed the construction of 5 buildings, the majority of which are in the Bronx. And I think we're, as owners of affordable housing that's also rent stabilized, I think we're trying to figure out what is exactly going to be the result of the news from yesterday. We're somewhat protected, but I think it's really going to be an issue for everyone.
All right, thank you very much. Mark, I know you've been developing properties since the early 90s, starting with 2-family homes and now building hundreds of units throughout the Bronx. Can you talk to us a little bit more about your latest projects, whether it be Fort Independence or some stuff in northern Bronx?
Sure. When you acquire a property, I only do ground-up construction. I was one of the, only players for a long time. I started 2-family, 2-families, 3-family, 4-story walk-ups. I must have built about 50 of those. I don't know, an elevator intimidated me. Till about 10 years ago, we built our first elevator building. Since then, I think we built about 50 up. Fort Independence was a unique project. It was a project on Bailey Avenue, the Kingsbridge section of the Bronx. For some reason, I'm known for buying the difficult sites. This site was a difficult site. When you guys can't get rid of a site, last year they call me up for some reason. This was a challenge. Of course, the neighborhood association wanted the property just to remain a mountain with grass growing on and wild grass growing all over it. It's a 120 unit project. We started about 18 months ago. We're going to finish it probably in about 3 months. It's in a unique area that is market rate in Section 8, depending on which streets we're talking about, which neighborhoods are kind of one and the same in the Bronx. It's tough for us to relate, being Bronx builders when, Manhattan, and a lot of the articles we read are more Manhattan driven when it comes to market rate. But this is true with this project, is going to be a market rate. And when we say market rate, we're talking workforce housing. We're talking, the people getting on the train, coming down. So we're excited about that. It had challenges. The neighborhood association still won't give me Saturday work permits. They're still telling me about how loud it was when we chopped rock there for 6 months. But you get through it. It's turned out it's going to be a wonderful product that really the community, the housing, it's needed. New construction's needed. And we always see a backup, a waiting list. So our rent up, it takes time. We get a lot of people who don't qualify, in certain neighborhoods. So really it's a process. But we're excited to bring that latest project to the market.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Radame, like you said, you're third generation. You've been an active developer and owner throughout the Bronx and the tri-state area for many, many decades. Your latest project is the Tremont Renaissance, the 255-unit project. Can you tell us a little bit more about that deal?
Yeah, thanks. So as you said, when my 3 generations now, but we're going on 60 years, and so when my grandfather, Santiago Perez, started in this business, he was one of the few Puerto Ricans at the time that was looking at real estate. Real estate that frankly, had been left vacant, burned, rubble-strewn, there were tile-filled lots. Everyone here knows the story of the borough of the Bronx and what it went through. It's not unlike places in Brooklyn, which went through the same kind of narrative. So I think coming from that background allows us to foster a tradition of community awareness, and because we've seen that kind of radical transformation, we really are the guys that have a transformational investment strategy. So Tremont Renaissance, as it's boldly called, is a great project. It's a $120 million development project. It offers 340,000 square feet of building, 256, just to correct the 255.
Excuse me.
Got to add the supers, right? It costs you more than any of the other units. Mark, I'm sure can understand that. But yeah, it was developed under the Mix and Match program. It was the largest project of its kind to develop that fiscal year to be closed on by HDC and HPD's Mix and Match M2 model. It's got a lot of great amenities. The project is, as I said, very forward-thinking and transformational. It's a LEED certified project, LEED Silver that is. We've got everything from studios, 1s, 2s, and 3s. We've got an aggressive amount of 3 bedrooms. We've got nearly 10% of the units being 3 bedrooms, and that's nearly unheard of. And I think what really is exciting about the project, besides all these, it's got a fitness center, and children's playroom, and bike storage, and spacious courtyards, several of them, rooftop plantings, rainwater harvesting. I mean, that's part of the stuff that you need to go green, to go LEED, if you will. We've got a technology center, computer center, 40,000 square feet of commercial space. It really addresses affordable housing on one end, the need for the elimination of food deserts by having a 16,000 square foot supermarket that we are going to run and operate. It will be our It'll be one of 6 supermarkets that we've got. And we're combining all that with 25,000 square feet of a health center. New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation will open up on the ground floor in a few months. So it's a really transformative project, and it's transit-oriented. We are 16 minutes from Grand Central Station on that Metro North train that's catty-corner from our site. It's the kind of discussion that's taking place throughout the whole borough of the Bronx, and I know that a lot of you here know about this, that we've got to activate or reactivate the Metro North stops. And we're doing more to do that. Fordham Road, for instance, now has activated the New Haven line, and that now is part of that. And so a lot more of that is going to happen, the linkages to those trains from ferries. I think that is a major growth component of the Bronx, and I think I'm proud to say that we were one of the developers that started that conversation, not in such a bold manner like the Hutch Metro Center had discussion, but by doing it with a local, small, inner central Bronx Metro North train that was dilapidated and almost forgotten. And I think we'll see a lot more of that, which will spur local economic growth and a true renaissance for this true market. And so we're proud of that.
You mentioned something about financing an M2 for the deal. Can you talk a little bit more about the M2 financing?
Yeah, so the M2 model was very complicated. We right now are closing on another project, which the city wanted us to use the M2 model on, and we said heck no. I think we said something worse than that, but I'll leave it at heck for now. It's a difficult product, but I got to tell you, I think it was right for the time. So the Ella model now can work with income averaging, being able to help your cash flows, and still not writing off essentially tax credits that you lose using mix and match to a certain degree. So only 50% of the units before would have even qualified for tax credits. Now a project like ours, where we went 90% AMI, 80% AMI, and then 60% AMI, we could not have worked under any other program. And I think the mix and match provided the subsidy levels that we needed at the time to be able to make that project work. Today, I think that income averaging solves a big problem that we had in financing projects that didn't want to be strictly low-income projects. We certainly didn't get into the business to build just low-income housing. I really, I applaud Mark for what he's doing, because he's the kind of developer that has been on both sides of the equation, building, the 1- and 2-story buildings, which I'm sure a lot of those were market, going to the affordable sector, and now doing other things and kind of creatively doing that in other places, not just the Bronx. And I think that people were skittish about doing anything else in the Bronx other than the Ella model. The mix and match model is one to look at. I'm not going to write it off as one that shouldn't be considered. But Ella solves a big problem that it was trying to address, so I don't know if it's as relevant anymore. I'm sorry, not Ella, but the Ella using the income averaging model.
Understood. Thank you very much. Rick, you've been involved in affordable housing for many years. You own thousands of units throughout the Bronx. Your latest project that you invested in is the Baychester Murphy housing with L&M and MBB. Can you tell us a little bit more about that deal and how it's structured specifically?
Sure. So Baychester Murphy is 720 units. It's a property that was owned by NYCHA, and we actually purchased it with L&M in a joint venture with NYCHA. And it's part of what you've probably heard the city talking about with respect to RAD, or rental assistance demonstration, where NYCHA is partnering with private developers to transfer buildings to private developers and leverage the resources of that sector and really tap into the things that developers are good at, doing renovation, managing properties, running buildings, and at the same time maintaining a high level of control over the properties and making sure that the tenants are protected, making sure that the properties will remain affordable for the foreseeable future, if not forever. So with L&M last year, we closed on Baychester Murphy. They're two relatively large complexes of about 300 to 400 units each. One of them in Baychester in the Bronx, one of them on Crotona by the park. They're both very, I mean, at the time, and we're just getting into construction now, the rents were very low, and that's sort of hallmark of NYCHA. And what we were able to do using Section 8 was increase the rents so that HUD pays the difference between what the tenant share is, and the tenant continues to pay whatever they were paying, which was somewhere around $300 a month, and HUD pays the difference up to market. And we use that delta to finance an acquisition price for NYCHA, because NYCHA, as you can imagine, needs all the money that it can get, and also to finance a large renovation of the properties. So we're investing, in terms of renovation, about $90 million across the whole portfolio, and replacing everything from kitchens and bathrooms to facade. We're cladding the facade in the facades of most of the buildings in an exterior insulation product called EPIS that waterproofs the building. It makes them more energy efficient. It also changes the entire place from an aesthetic perspective. And we found that by making real improvements beyond just replacing kitchens and bathrooms, but making improvements to the properties and changing the way that they look, the residents there no longer feel like they're public housing residents. They no longer feel like they're living in the projects, but it goes from that to creating a community, creating a place that people really want to live in. And as a result of that, they take better care of the properties, they pay their rent on time, and they take a lot of pride of ownership over the whole complex. And by doing that, we've seen that time and time again in a lot of the large-scale projects that we've purchased and renovated. And by doing that, it makes a big difference both for us as landlords and from a tenant satisfaction perspective and a tenant engagement perspective. So we're looking at that. We're also investing a lot of money in community facilities. There's a large senior center at the Baychester complex that we're completely renovating. There is an after-school program. There's a daycare. There are a lot of community services that have been integral to the NYCHA complexes and integral to the community. So we're spending a lot of time, a lot of money in bringing those resources up to today's standards. We closed on it in December and are about 30 to 40% through the renovation already. We've really hit the ground and hope to be done with the whole project in about 18 months.
All right, thank you very much. I know on a couple of projects that you've been purchasing, you're opting in for Article 11. Can you discuss that process and where you see the upside in it?
Yeah, sure. So we've bought a significant amount of existing housing around the city, and the majority of which was rent stabilized at the time when we purchased it. And we're able to compete with market rate buyers with a business plan of turning units, getting rents to market, deregulating, using IAIs and MCIs and other of the rent stabilization mechanisms that are now going to be a lot less valuable to people. And we were able to compete with those buyers by working with the city to put the buildings into an affordable housing structure, a regulated structure, where the tenants in place are protected, their rents stay the same, they go up by RGB. But beyond that, going forward, when units are leased, they're leased to different area median income brackets. So the units remain affordable, and we commit to that for a 40-year period. So that sounds a little bit crazy when we're competing with people who are turning units and increasing rent roll as quickly as possible. But we're able to offset that by using tax abatement. So we have sort of the opposite business plan of people who are turning units. Instead of turning units, increasing rent roll as quickly as possible over a 5-year window, we increased NOI on day one by cutting the taxes. So we could have a tax bill that's $1 million that we cut down to $100,000, which goes straight to the NOI. But at the same time, we're not turning units as aggressively. And when units roll over naturally, they're released to affordable tenants. The resident, the people who move in get income qualified, they pay 30% of their income towards rent. And there are different brackets, different categories of rent and income throughout the building. So that ultimately there's going to be a mixed income aspect to each of the buildings that we've bought. We have completed that on a project that's 400 units in the West Farm section of the Bronx. That was previously affordable. We actually bought it from a private owner who was turning units and increasing rents. We bought it, we put it back into an affordable structure. We cut the taxes down, and we'll own and operate that. And then we're in contract to buy a 400-unit building in Highbridge in the Bronx, and we'll execute a similar business plan. We're able to get market returns because we invest our own money, we invest partners' money in the deal. So we're in the one that I mentioned in Highbridge, there's about $22 million of equity going into it, and we work it out with the city, so there's no subsidy involved, there's a tax abatement, and we can get a return on the money that we invest in the deal, but also keep the property regulated.
All right, thank you very much. So now let's really discuss the elephant in the room, which is the new rent regulation laws. Rick, you were recently quoted in an article discussing the new rent regulations that came out yesterday and pretty much going to be signed the next day or two. There has been a lot of talk about how the laws are devastating and irresponsible. With the vacancy bonus being repealed, changes to the MCIs and IAIs, can you talk a little bit more about these new laws, and do you think that it will create new opportunity moving forward, or how it's going to really impact your business plan?
Yeah, so I think the new laws, we were not expecting, I was involved in some of the conversation leading up to this, and we were definitely not expecting the laws to be this bad. I think there are a lot of people who bought buildings a year or 2 years ago who are really going to be in trouble, and those people were reliant on a business plan that I mentioned before, which is just turning units, aggressively turning units. How quickly can we increase the rent roll? But I think overall it's really not a great thing for the city, because now people who might have to do $2 million of capital work to a building to replace a boiler, roof, whatever, and need to finance that somehow won't be able to do it because MCIs are now capped at 2% a year. And as units turn over, you have a person who's paying $400 a month and who's lived there for 1,000 years, and it might cost $50 or $60 or $70,000 to turn that unit. You can't even increase the rent more than based on that $15,000 a unit IAI cap. And it's really going to be a problem for a lot of people. For us, we're relatively well protected because we weren't turning units aggressively, but we are going to be affected on the exit because we have a lot of equity in the deals. So the market is going to really, I think, is going to really realize a significant correction. I think we already saw a lot of it. We did pretty well buying some buildings over the past 6 months because people were scared about what to do. But I think you're going to see a real reset as a result of the rent regs changes.
Mark, how do you see these new laws affecting your business plan? Do you think it's going to impact your properties that you're currently developing moving forward?
I think being in the ground-up business, we're maximizing rents right out of the gate. So I don't think it's going to affect us there. But those of us that have an existing portfolio, of course, that vacancy, it's devastating. And also when we have to go in and do repairs with very little compensation, I think it's just irresponsible. One-sided and irresponsible. We'll see where it lands and with the administration. But I think people are really going to stay on the sidelines. I think, in the larger institution, Mary brought up a good point, they just have to utilize capital. It doesn't have to make sense today for them, but it can make sense down the road. Being a small, moderate, size builder, the deal has to die out today. I cannot identify with $100 a square foot. Doesn't make sense. And, I'm fully integrated I control every aspect from having my own excavators, foundation company, 50 framers, 40 plumbers. It's tough for someone that's going to beat my model. And I just don't understand it. So I'm not caught up in that frenzy. Have people been knocking on my door offering, a lot of money for properties that I'm building? Yes. And I say, really? You really want to give me that? But I'm not a seller. I'm a long-term investor. And I think that's what we all talked about. We have a responsibility as developers. We're coming in. We're just not, there for the one hit. It's about making communities better, long-lasting, being responsible, improving the quality of life. But so the opportunity zone from a smaller perspective, I'm just sitting on the sidelines and I'm just looking at these deals that are trading for these numbers just in disbelief. I just don't get it. We're a working class borough, we're workforce housing. I believe that's where we are. Everybody, we can't all be Williamsburg, right? And we're proud of what we do. And so the opportunity zone to me, it really doesn't affect me. I think, it's inflated some properties, but I just don't get it.
Bradley, what are your thoughts on the opportunity?
I definitely echo what Mark was saying, and I got to tell you, Mark and Rick are much more aggressive at acquisition, and I know that your brokers at your firm know this than I am. And it's partly because, look, I keep talking about that 60 years of investing in this borough. It's hard for us to make sense of deals that other guys that are entering the market, even 20 years ago, people who entered the market even 20 years ago, those numbers were modest for the kind of returns that we saw. So I think we've got to kind of get a reality check ourselves, right? Like I've got to kind of realize that, some of these projects pencil out at a 2 and 4% internal rate of return, and I've got to accept that. I haven't yet. So $100 a square foot is not the kind of development site that I think, and mind you, I think, what Rick said about Article 11, we use that at Tremont Renaissance, and yes, it helps the deal phenomenally. And we used that in 2015 when there was still a very strong, discussion about getting rid of the 421A at that time. So I think that people that are investing at $100 a square foot are thinking on the capitalization of increased land and asset value, and not thinking about cash flows or internal rate of return. And I know I'm probably one of the odd guys that still looks at IRR as a computation. The opportunity zone. So I spoke about this actually at a panel discussion 3 months ago. I think I'm a glutton for punishment and love to attend these a little too much. But I spoke about it, and so look, there's significant amount of capital being raised for opportunity zones across this city and across other places in the country. And I think we anticipate, I read an article that said something like $1 billion of opportunity zone fund capital that are going to be looked at, that are already looking at areas of the Bronx. You said, the Brookfield investment, for instance, and how that's going to accelerate, honestly, that's going to accelerate Bronx transformation in hopefully, thoughtful ways. Because one of the things that the empowerment zone really requires is a long-term investment, a long-term approach. And so that kind of approach means that longer hold period really is going to enable, I think, and I'm optimistic about this, I think it's going to enable more entrepreneurial, thoughtful, game-changing kind of projects to come to the borough of the Bronx. Because that's the kind of thing that requires patience This is the kind of thing that's going to require other things around these sites to change as well. And maybe there'll be more advocacy for things like that, for the kind of infrastructure that needs to kind of be retraded for these projects to take place. So, I think, is the opportunity zone the biggest thing to hit real estate maybe ever? I think the short answer is yes. The long answer is for sure in the Bronx.
All right, thank you. Rick, what are your thoughts on the opportunity zones?
I think OZ is a really powerful tool, and mainly because no one actually wants to pay taxes. So it allows you to move your gain that you from the sale of anything, it could be stock, it could be real estate, into a real estate deal and offset that, basically get an interest-free loan from the government for 7 years. And it will definitely bring a lot of capital, and it has brought a lot of capital into the market. But the deal still has to actually make sense, at least that's what we think. And it's really hard to make sense of a lot of stuff right now because construction cost has gone up so significantly. So we're having trouble making sense of deals even in some parts of Harlem where the rent is $50. And I don't know how people are making rentals work. I think condos can work anywhere, and anything can work on paper, but it's difficult to see how you can get to a 5.5 cap, even as low as a 5.5 cap unleveraged in Harlem, in some parts of Harlem, and definitely in the Bronx. The market rent there is like $35 to $40. Some people are trying to say it's $50, but I don't see it from the buildings that are currently leasing up, like Crescendo in the Bronx. There are actual buildings that are leasing up now that have relatively small units that are not getting those rents. So I think people are making speculative investments and using Opportunity Zone to boost their returns. But from our perspective, it really doesn't make a lot of sense in the South Bronx. We're very interested in developing, and we're building a bunch of buildings in the Bronx now, and they're all affordable. I think there's an opportunity to do workforce housing. I think what Mark's doing at Radame, Mark specifically without any regulatory involvement is great. But I don't see how it works at $100 when rent's $35 and construction cost is $325.
You said something that was interesting, which is how can you achieve rents at $50 a buildable, $50 a square foot for rental? We, as brokers, we're speaking to a lot of investors and a lot of developers, and a lot of the acquisitions that have been happening in the South Bronx, their rebuttal is they're making sense at $50 to even $55 a square foot.
I think you told me that rent's $50 a foot.
But if you're getting rents at $50 to $55 a square foot, somehow people are making sense at, if you compare it to East Harlem, where development sites are trading at $200 and north of $200 a buildable square foot, and for older construction buildings, you're getting $50 to $55 a square foot. They're saying in new construction buildings in the Bronx, if you're buying at $100 a buildable square foot, it makes sense at 50 to 55. Do you think that's actually achievable? I mean, we're going to have probably, 2,000-3,000 units come to the market in the next 3 to 5 years. Mark, I see you're itching.
Yeah, I like what you said, Rick, about, when you guys call us up. You guys hit us all the time with deals, one deal after the other. 80% of them I don't even look twice at, they're just overpriced. And you guys try to justify it. Well. A couple deals in Mont Haven that we're talking about, that they took a chance with that boutique building. We're talking about one building in one area. The vast majority of, all the properties we're doing, scattered off the main streets, people have to have it has to be affordable. $35 is probably the right price. We're not getting more than, we're getting $1,900 to $2,200, $2,300 maybe if it's a nice view or a little larger unit for 2 bedrooms. This is the reality. So, I know you guys, judge it on one building or one investor. I just don't see it, and I can't tell you, every day It's, you know, the deals are just, everybody's a seller now. Everybody, they're knocking on their doors, they're saying, hey, we can get you $4 million for this property, and you know, the married couple there 40 years, $4 million, wow. So I think that's a problem, that you're giving unrealistic expectations. The deals do not tie out. The larger ones, the 300, the 400, the 500, I mean, I know they catch the headlines, but the everyday, you know, builders with the everyday properties, 60 units, 48 units, 76 units, 95 units, 120 units, those deals don't tie out. They're too small for HPD, there's only so much money to go around. I've got a couple HPD deals as well. We're doing a mix and match, we're just in contract now with an LO program, 485 units. I mean, how many 485 units are out there? You know, not too many, and it's a handful of us that, you know, have the ability, have the contacts, have the relationships, you know, to do it. But the vast majority of these buildings, $50 a square foot, good luck.
I just want to add to that. First of all, I want to commend you guys because, yeah, this is a real dangerous position. I'm feeling bashful for you guys, but I think, how do I spin that? I think that one of the great things about Ariel Properties is that you guys do things like this that probably other brokers would feel extremely uncomfortable doing. But this is the kind of information that forms the basis of the material that you guys send to guys like us, which frankly I find very rewarding. Look, I gotta tell you, I thought I was the only guy in the room, and some of the brokers here know that I've often been called and said, you gotta call Rick, you gotta call Mark on that. I don't know how they pencil them out. It doesn't work for me, but I'm sure they're doing something that I just have not learned yet, you know? But I'm glad to hear that, you know, we're kind of like all having the same struggle. And I think it gets back to what I was saying, that, you know, when you're looking at a horizon that's beyond that 10-year horizon, right? And you're not, you know, I think, and when you're willing to accept, look, you said, you know, East Harlem, you know, or even Manhattan, think about this. The returns are far less. They're not, the cash flow, the NOI, those numbers shape up at IRRs that are in the negatives, probably. And frankly, I mean, maybe they're like a point, you know? So if you're, and I think that the investors are saying, you know, to answer your question, I think they're saying, yeah, well, I mean, you know, Adam, you own supermarkets. What do you make over there? And yeah, the frank reality is, yeah, I put my head down and walk away and say 2%. And so I guess, you know, for a safe investment, right? I mean, so let's be honest. We're all in this room and we're all partaking in this real estate economy called New York City. So, you know, we're just accepting deals for less. And that's when you get guys that are trading at those numbers, they're just accepting them for less. I mean, and they want to get into the last, you know, the last piece of the New York City that is in some, you know, way attainable. Because Brooklyn isn't. Because Manhattan isn't, because any side of Manhattan, even East Harlem, that now has finally been recognized as part of that island, is totally unattainable. And so the Bronx is that, you know, kind of that last opportunity for many investors.
The other side is that nothing ever makes sense at the time. So the people, who knows, in 2 or 3 years from now, these people might be getting $50 a foot and laughing, saying, like, you guys are fucking idiots to think that you weren't going to get $50 a foot. And we're doing, like, we bought a deal in Ridgewood, Queens, where we thought we'd get $50 and everyone, and like a bunch of other people said, you guys are idiots, but we're getting $50 now. So I think that's probably part of it. And then the other thing is that, like what Radamay said, is if you have long-term capital, or relatively inexpensive capital, that's also long-term, you can afford to buy some of this stuff and build a building and just wait it out. And maybe that's part of the business, and not sell it. Maybe they don't need to sell it in 3 years, or when they complete the building, they can hold it for a while. And that's sort of like the best outcome. Then eventually those buildings will lease up and they'll do really well. But it's just a question of how they get from completion through the next 3 or 4 years. And it really doesn't work. I think if you have short-term capital, or you're just a merchant builder and you need to sell and get your money back.
Okay. Right, you mentioned the Metro North train stations, and I don't know if you're familiar, I'm sure you're familiar, but some people here might not be familiar. There's 4 brand new Metro North train stations coming to the Bronx, I believe in 2021 on the east side, which is the 4 stops are going to be Hunts Point, Parkchester, Morris Park, and Co-op City. What areas in the Bronx are you guys most excited about? Because we're talking about North Bronx, we spoke about Fordham, we spoke about South Bronx. What areas do you guys like in the Bronx? And Ryan, I guess we'll start.
Yeah, thanks. So I think certainly the East Bronx presents a tremendous amount of growth, but I think that the growth in a lot of those areas, because the zoning is low density, for a lot of those parts, like, particularly Country Club, Hunts Point is industrial manufacturing. I think that, and then as you go more north along that, the eastern corridor of the Bronx, you're going to be facing the more low density going into Covent Gardens, just south of it, where the last stop will be. I think, so I think there's going to be tremendous growth potential in terms of industrial, commercial development, office space along Hutchison Metro. The Hutch Metro Center is a great example of that, and they're like to capacity there. So that means that there's opportunities for other players to enter those neighborhoods. I think that the South Bronx still has tremendous opportunity. There are dilapidated buildings. There are a lot of them. It's sad to say there's still vacant buildings. You can't come across them that often. It may be harder to find, but they are there. There's those awful, sites that Mark has grown accustomed to being an expert with, so there are a lot of opportunities for investment in the Bronx. The Hutchison Metro the Metro North train is a huge infrastructure project. And what's really positive about that is that they're actually, the borough president and the governor have been working on bringing the fare pricing down. Because for a while, the conversation on the Metro North train was, yeah, that's nice, but it's expensive as hell. This city card, I believe is what they're tagging the name as, will bring down the fare so that the train operates at essentially the same cost as the subway train. So I think that's going to spur, a real need for development in those areas.
I think we'll end with this, which is the Bronx has come a long way in the past 10, 15 years. Where do you guys see the Bronx in 10, 15 years from now? And I guess Mark will start with you with that.
Watching it evolve over the last 10 years, being there, I was one of the only guys that was building, market rate housing. And remember, like I said before, market rate and Section 8 in some areas are one and the same. I see stabilized growth. I think, the majority of buildings that are going up are subsidized. HPD, HDC, 60, 80, 90% AMI. Are we going to get to 130% AMI? Let's see, in some areas, maybe if they create that war, along the river there, and they create a special enclave, maybe that achieves 130% AMI. But I think for the vast majority, I think it's going to be, the workforce housing, the borough, where the employees live and commute. And I don't see it. I don't see 130% AMI on, Webster and 200th Street, Bedford Park. I just don't see it. And nor do I believe from a philosophical standpoint that it should be. Everybody needs a place to live. We have to address all populations. And I think we're doing that as, you know, as responsible developers. So I see it being, you know, growth, but controlled growth. And that's my model, that's my philosophy.
All right, thank you very much. Rabbit?
Yeah, so you know, I think to look at where the Bronx will be 10 years from now, you kind of got to look at where, you know, you're hit, right? To know where you're going, you've got to know where you came from. And so I think, you know, because, you know, my family made their first stop from the island, the borough of the Bronx, I know, I firmly know that history. Both by experience and, you know, by hearing it from my dad and my grandfather. So the Bronx's history, you know, when I said, you know, God's country, that tag name was cemented on the Bronx because of its plethora of worship, of houses of worship, in all sorts of faiths. And whether it was earlier on with synagogues to then, you know, the proliferation of different Christian churches that you see today, and some failing and some being redeveloped. So why do I say all that? Because the Bronx was built with, you know, the MBD, the Bronx Desperados, that took hold, and SEDCO, and Mount Hope, and Aquinas Housing. And so they were these faith-based nonprofit organizations that in '78 or so said, look, the borough's burning, who's going to you know, take hold of this place? And it was those ministries that did that. And all the while, you know, there was the Sobro, and there was the SEPCO, Father Giganti, and there was also Joe Simone's dad at the time. So it went from that to the guys like Mastermind and Stagg Group, and now today the institutional investors and people that are parachuting from all different places into the borough of the Bronx. So I think that the smartest thing that the Bronx can do to pave the way to a really good future is to keep an economy that's as open and as flexible as possible. I think that its future will be a combination of the strong nonprofits. Today, I'm sure a lot of the sales that are taking place are still, especially on the higher tier, are to groups like Common Ground and other nonprofit developers. Garcia's a strong player, and so you're still going to have a strong nonprofit component. You'll have guys like us, you know, in the private real estate investment side, and then you'll have. Well, I think those are going to be the two big players in the market in the borough of the Bronx, and there's going to be a need for it because we're talking about it when we talk about the housing crisis that we're facing today, when we talk about the homelessness issue. You know, it's taking me a long time to fill in the 256 units of Tremont Renaissance, and one of the reasons why is the tremendous influx of homeless and subsidy people. So even though I've got, you know, the housing that is priced for this AMI level of income, I'm taking vouchers and subsidies, and that process takes very long, especially in a day where we have got more of that happening than ever before in our city. So that's all part of the fact that I think I'll kind of wrap it up here by saying we talked about the growth segments, right? And the places for that, and where, you know, industrial and manufacturing uses, I think, are going to go to the tech fields. And, you know, science, technology, engineering, and math is what all of our kids right now are being taught in schools, right? So we know that that's the future of our economy. But that kind of economy leaves more and more people needing a safety net to fall on, because it leaves more and more people out of the economy. So we're going to need so I think that's where, you know, that empathy sector, if you will, the industry of empathy, comes into play. I think the Bronx is going to be home to it. It's not going to be the next Williamsburg. It's going to be the next Bronx that we see. And that Bronx is going to be a borough of welcome. So I think I'm very optimistic about it. And that means welcome means that there's room for all of us to participate.
I like that. Bronx is the next Bronx. Rick, what are your thoughts on the next 10 years in the Bronx?
So I think the Bronx has great infrastructure. It's got amazing transit access, especially with Metro North. Brad said his project can get you into Midtown in like 15 minutes. The stuff in the South Bronx is just about the same. I think you're just going to see more of this. Ruben Diaz Jr., who's the borough president, has done a great job of encouraging more investment and more development in the Bronx, and responsible development. There are a lot of other places in New York City where they don't want development, and community boards are very anti-development. Some of that exists everywhere, but I think a lot of the construction and a lot of the work that you've seen, and these guys have been doing this a lot longer than me, have seen over the past 10 years or 20 years, is really paving the way for more of that, for more retail, more community facility, more resources for the people who live there to build upon the success that the borough has realized.
All right, thank you very much. And to wrap up here, any questions from the audience?
Hi, my name is Jeff Corkin. I'm currently developing in Riverdale, out in Parkchester, and actually in an opportunity zone in Yonkers, which is close enough to the Bronx that this has been a really great and informative discussion, so thank you. One question I have, and it sort of goes to what Mark said early on about when you're building market rate in the Bronx, you're kind of already at the upper edge of the rents, so you're not that focused on future growth because you're kind of coming in at the top. My question is, and this applies in the Riverdale market and across the Bronx, when people say they're building market rate rentals, presumably in most, if not all cases, they're going to be depending or applying for a 421A abatement on the real estate taxes, but that's going to push their building into stabilization. Do you think people are going to give up on 421A in order to avoid stabilization? Or do you think that if you're coming in at the top, you're kind of assuming stable growth going forward, you'll keep your 421A to get that, tax abatement up front and your underwriting still works?
Okay, yeah. I think, where you're building there, I've done a couple buildings. You just opened up a building on 242nd Street in Broadway, 73 units, and that was a 70-30. I guess it was an 80-20 if it qualified for the old one. But if your market rates, if you're above that Section 8, so for one bedroom, the voucher I think is $1,700. If you can get $1,900 to $2,000, then I think you have to keep that 421A. So that's what I did there, and that model worked great. To give that up, you have to weigh that, the 15-year versus the 25-year. But the AMI is now at 130% AMI. You have to give a 10% at 70% AMI, but the 20% you can go higher. So I think with that particular one project that you talked about, I would definitely do the 421A. I wouldn't abandon it. I think you'll regret it.
Well, thank you. My name is Arthur Rosenfield. You guys have done a great job painting the proper picture, a balanced picture of the Bronx. You mentioned the cost of land at an average of $100 a square foot. Would you comment on cost of construction in the Bronx? The business, the building Congress estimated like $365 a square foot for hard costs. And then I guess we probably figure about $100 for soft costs. Could you comment on what you're experiencing and how you're penciling that out?
So, I think that's very high, 365, though I've seen close to that by some overzealous contractors. I think Britt said it before, 325, and I wrote it down because I'm like, oh man, I'm beating up this contractor, telling him that he's way too high on this price. Look, the prices have gone, in 2015, I closed Tremont Renaissance, and that was, only 4 years ago, right? I closed in December, actually it's not even 4 years yet, because I closed in December of that year. And we were in the 200s, we were in the solid 200s, like middle 200s. To know that we're even at, just 6 months ago, I think the number was like 309. And to hear and to know now that that maybe I'm beating up, maybe I should sign that really quick as soon as I get back to the office at 325 at the GC. So, you know, I can't, 365